What is going on, guys? Money Webby here, back again with another fantasy football video. Some draft prep heading into the year. I'm covering my bust of the season, the guys that I think have the highest probability of not returning value at where they're being drafted and just having a bad season compared to like how they're projected out to. So I got 8 players, 2 guys at every position again. 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 quarterbacks, and 2 tight ends. So I'm very excited about getting this one to you guys. Be sure to drop a like in the video before we get going if you want to see more of this fantasy football content. I can bring it to you guys like every single week, some other videos. You can comment any ideas for other content you want me to cover. But let's just get into it. First guy up, Demaryius Thomas, a very consistent player throughout his career, putting up good numbers, but there's been a dip in production each of the last 3 seasons. If you look at the numbers, his yards have gone down, his receptions have gone down, and his yards per catch have gone down. So the numbers not looking good. He's 30 years old, entering his 9th season, so the age is really starting to catch up to him. I think with just how much he was used in like the Peyton Manning offenses, getting like over 150 targets, it really wore him down, and he's kind of an athletic wide receiver that relies on that ability. So now that the athleticism kind of is going away as he gets older, I think it's just a bad look for DT heading into the season. Also, this is a guy that really relied on a high target share. If you look at his target share last year, still very high. He was 12th among wide receivers with a 25.4% target share. And that had Emmanuel Sanders being out for 4 games, and just not many other wide receivers that could do that much. But they ended up selecting 2 guys in the draft, Cortland Sutton, who's a very good prospect in the 2nd round, and also Deshaun Hamilton in the 4th round. So 2 very good prospects that could easily get some good snaps and some solid targets to take away from the high target share. From Demaryius Thomas, he's currently being ranked in the at wide receiver 16 and his ADP in the 4th round. So with how I kind of envision this season going for a Demaryius Thomas, I think he won't finish as a top 20 wide receiver, and actually will probably be more of a wide receiver 3 this season in fantasy football. So I'm definitely not targeting him at his current value and like where he's being selected. So he's a guy I think is going to bust season. The age is catching up to him, and I'm avoiding him in my drafts at all costs. So for my second guy, though, Devin had a breakout season last year, really due to the opportunity he saw. We saw Greg Olsen go down with an injury, ended up missing 9 games, and they actually traded away Kelvin Benjamin at the beginning of the season over to the Buffalo Bills. So he really wasn't fighting with anyone for those targets, but this season's going to be a completely different story. They got DJ Moore in the 1st round. Another great prospect, a really good route runner, kind of a guy that seems NFL ready. And Greg Olsen, he'll be back, should be back to full health and ready to go. So if you look at the splits with and without Olsen last year, without him, his targets bumped up to 7.8, a very solid target per game number. But with him in the lineup, he actually only got 5.8 targets. So I think Devin will actually be the 4th option in this offense behind Greg Olsen. DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey is pretty much like a slot wide receiver at running back. So I think all those guys will get more targets. And this isn't really a pass heavy offense. Cam Newton doesn't really have that high of a pass attempt totals. They do like to keep the ball on the ground a good amount with Cam Newton. Also, they got CJ Anderson. So they don't have that many targets to allocate across the offense. So I don't think Funchess will be like fantasy relevant really at all this season. Maybe like a plug-and-play wide receiver 3 when you need him if you go down with some injuries, but he's still being ranked as a guy that's going to be solid and give you production, but I just don't see it. Don't think he'll finish in the top 40 wide receivers, honestly, if like everyone stayed healthy, obviously, but I would not rank him in my top 40. He's being drafted with an 8th round draft pick, too high of an asset for him. I wouldn't even take him in the top 10 rounds, so I'm off Devin Funchess. Think he's going to bust. And now let's get on to running back Jerick McKinnon, the talk of the fantasy town. Everyone like loves this guy or they hate him. Kind of one of those enigmas where you can't really get a sense on like the whole community, but his ADP is sky high. 2nd round with the 9th pick, way too high for me. Way too many question marks with this guy, and his upside isn't that great considering Jerick McKinnon and what kind of back he is. He's more of a guy that just gets like your 15 touches, like a Dion Lewis type. He can't really handle a full workload at all. He's never seen, or he saw 200 touches last year, but he's never seen like over 210 touches in a season. And if he's going to be a top 10 back, or where he's being ranked at the 12th spot, then he's going to need to get over like 250 touches. And I really struggle to see him getting that, especially with some good backs behind him. Matt Breida, he's a solid little player, nice speed back that could take away some catches, and also Kyle Juszczyk, whoever you say his name, the fullback in that offense, can take away some looks. I believe he got around 40 targets last season in that 49ers offense. And we know with Kyle Shanahan, he likes to kind of share the workload with the running backs like we saw with Freeman and Tevin Coleman. So I think he's bringing in McKinnon here just to be a very effective guy with not a huge usage. And not with the running back, you really need to get those opportunities, especially in not a great offense. The 49ers offense, I think, will be middle of the pack average. And we saw McKinnon when he got that high workload over the last 2 seasons. He really struggled with the yards per carry, only 3.8 last season and 3.4 in 2016. So 3.6 yards per carry in the last 2 seasons, definitely not that great. I struggle to see him having like a huge season. Also, he doesn't get to score many touchdowns because he is kind of a smaller back. Maybe you see Kyle Juszczyk being that goal line back. I'm not really sure, but there's just too many question marks for me with Jerick McKinnon, where he's being drafted. If he doesn't perform up to his ability where he's being ranked, which I don't think he will, then it really hurts your team. So I'm avoiding him. Think he's going to bust at where he's being drafted currently in the second round. Way too high for me. For my second guy, LeSean McCoy. He's kind of declined a little bit in where he's being ranked. He was ranked at like the 10th running back around a month ago or so, but now running back 16, not too bad, but still, I'm just avoiding this guy. There's too many bad situations upon him this year. The offensive line really got a lot worse. They lost 3 of their top guys: Eric Wood, their center, Richie Incognito, a very good guard, and also their left tackle, Cordy Glenn. So more than half of their offensive line is gone from last season, so a ton of turnover. Really see LeSean McCoy struggling to find any room in a bad offense. They have no wide receivers, so they're going to load the box, and really he's going to struggle, I think, this season. The yards per carry is going to be way down. So with that huge downgrade to their offensive line. And also Tyrod Taylor, he does have an impact on the run game with his running ability, with that read option. So that's really going to hurt LeSean McCoy this year. And he's 30 years old. This guy has a lot of tread in the tires. He's had over 2,500 touches in his career. So a ton of tread in the tire, like I said. And I just don't see it from this year. A bad offense with not much room to operate. He honestly struggled creating on his own last season. If you look at the numbers, he had a 2.1 yards after contact clip. That was actually 53rd among running backs last year. So he was really bad after contact. And like I said, he's going to be bottled up. He's not a guy that normally is great after contact throughout his career even. And now that he's even declining more, it's just things just aren't adding up for a great season for LeSean McCoy. So I think he'll finish outside the top 20 backs. Probably maybe around that 25 to 30 range. So where he's being drafted in the 3rd round, I'm not using a 3rd round draft pick on him. Maybe in the 5th round I would give it a go, but too many question marks, a terrible offense, and he's getting up there in age. So I think you got to stay away from LeSean McCoy. And for my 5th guy, we're going to go with Evan Engram here, the 2nd round, or the 2nd year tight end, that is. He had a pretty damn good year because of some injuries to some key players in their offense. Odell Beckham went down with an injury early, and also Sterling Shepard, in and out of the lineup last year, wasn't really healthy the whole entire season. So Evan Engram really got a big bump from that, and they were a pass-heavy team with no run game to show for. Really struggled with that, but they're kind of trying to get that going, I think. Drafting Saquon Barkley with the 2nd overall pick. Also, they bolstered up their offensive line a bit, so a little bit better of an offensive line. Obviously, a much better running back than what they were working with last season, so they're not going to be as pass-heavy, especially with an aging Eli Manning back there. So I see less targets to go around and more competition with Odell Beckham and Sterling Shepard back into the swing of things. So Evan Engram, where he's being ranked, tight end 6, just not seeing it for him. And we know with younger tight ends, they can definitely have some a learning curve and struggle. We saw Evan Engram just be abysmal with the run blocking and some head scratching plays. He didn't have a clean season by any imagination. He really benefited from the opportunity, like I said. So I think with the less opportunity to go around, 2nd year in the NFL, I think there can still be some disaster weeks for Evan Engram where he gets 1 catch or 10 yards or something like that, especially if this Giants offense and the Giants defense is better, where they don't have to like be in pass mode 24/7 like they were. The defense was awful last season. Should be a little bit better. But like I said, young tight end, too many question marks around him with the offense with those big factors, big pass targets with Shepard. Also, Barkley's a big force out of the backfield in the receiving game. So I don't see Evan Engram having the opportunity to be a top, maybe he might not even be a top 10 tight end for me. So he's ranked tight end 6, 6th-round draft pick. I like a lot of guys past, honestly, the tight end 10 mark with Eric Ebron, like I mentioned in my last video. Ricky Sales-Jones, Jordan Reed, he's going later. So I'm not wasting a 6th-round draft pick on a guy like Evan Engram, so I'm avoiding him. I think he'll bust at where he's being drafted with pick 66. And for my second tight end, going a little bit later, but 11th round, Jack Doyle. Still, like an 11th round pick, it's not something you really just want to have a guy that might just end up on the waiver wires in 2 weeks, because Eric Ebron, great prospect, great talent, like I mentioned, coming out of college, but really struggled with the Lions. But I think this season is the year he gets it together. Jack Doyle, not a great tight end, just another guy that benefited off opportunity and just what happened with the offense last season with Andrew Luck going down with an injury. So Jacoby Brissett, he slid into that role of starting quarterback, and he really was afraid to move the ball down the field. Like, he kept on checking it down to the running backs, throwing it to Jack Doyle for like 5 to 10 yards over the middle of the field. But with Andrew Luck back, he's going to be slinging it to T.Y. Hilton and some more guys on the outside of thing, and then getting Eric Ebron involved. So I don't see Jack Doyle benefiting as much. We saw Hilton's targets actually go down 48. So he had 48 less targets in 2017 compared to 2016 with Luck. So I see T.Y. Hilton bouncing back in that regard, taken away from Jack Doyle, and also Ebron taken away. He had like no tight end competition really last season or even 2 years ago after Fleener left. So with Ebron, big force in that offense. Honestly, they signed him to a lot of money. So I think he's going to take away from Jack Doyle. So Jack Doyle, he's going to be on your waiver wires by like week 2, so just don't even pick him in the draft. Avoid him. He's going to bust. And now for my quarterback, my first guy, Jimmy Garoppolo. Based on where he's being ranked, you wouldn't really think like he should be a bust pick. He's being ranked quarterback 13 on Fantasy Pros. I should probably have mentioned that, but the rankings are from Fantasy Pros. The ADPs and the overall pick are from Fantasy Football Calculator. But yeah, he's being ranked as quarterback 13, but he's currently being drafted as the 9th quarterback off the board. I think he's just a guy that's being overhyped based on maybe him coming from the Patriots. As people figuring that, oh, if he's from the Patriots, he must be a good quarterback. And also, we had some flashes in the pan last year with some big kind of games, I guess, even though the numbers weren't huge. He only had like 5 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, or 7 touchdowns and 5 interceptions and 5 starts. So that's the thing I'm really worried about, though, is the interceptions. This guy is very loose with the football, kind of makes some head-scratching plays now and then. He's not really a proven commodity in the NFL, really. He's had, I think maybe 7 starts under his belt in his career. So I'm not really buying into the hype, honestly, especially in fantasy football. This offense isn't that attractive with Pierre Garçon. He's getting up there in age. Marquise Goodwin, who's more of just a speedster wide receiver. George Kittle, not a proven tight end. And also Jerick McKinnon, he's had some flashes, like I said, similar to Jimmy Garoppolo, but also not a proven guy. So this offense has a lot of question marks for me. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a guy that will struggle with interceptions throughout his whole entire career. So I'm expecting over 10 interceptions from him, honestly, on this season. So that would take away from his fantasy production. He doesn't get any rushing yards or any really rushing ability either. So that would take away from his upside and his floor. And I just don't like this offense that much with how they're being drafted. Kind of overhyped, that Kyle Shanahan effect, I guess, because the Falcons had a much superior offensive line and better weapons with Julio Jones, Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman. So they think that Kyle Shanahan can just make these players, I guess. I'm not seeing it, though. So I'm fading Jimmy Garoppolo in my drafts, not taking him. A lot of guys behind him I would prefer, like Patrick Mahomes, Big Ben, just to name a few. I'm probably missing out. Probably even Phillip Rivers. Some guys ranked behind him that I would take ahead of him. So I'm avoiding Jimmy Garoppolo. And for my second quarterback bust, Drew Brees. I mentioned him last year. He was being selected as like quarterback 3, and I put him in my players to avoid video in 2017 last year before the season. I'm going back to the well with him. This offense is just more of a run-based team. They're set up perfectly for running the ball with Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara, terrific run blocking offensive line, and a great defense. So I think if they want to play the long game here, if they want to make their or set their eyes on the Super Bowl, you really want to limit Drew Brees. You don't want to have him throwing the ball around too much. Just be super effective and do the play action every now and then and kind of keep the defenses guessing. But I think they're going to keep the ball on the ground a lot here again. He was the quarterback 9 overall last season. So he's still being ranked higher than what he did last year. I guess they're just expecting some regression or positive regression for Brees here, but I'm not really buying into it. I think he'll still finish around that 10th to 11th quarterback overall here. He averaged only 16.4 fantasy points per game last year, which actually was the 14th highest among quarterbacks. So some bad health or some other quarterbacks gave him that benefit. Just in comparison, Dak Prescott averaged only 0.1 less fantasy points per game, and he had a really bad season. So Drew Brees, where he's being selected with that 7th round draft pick, I'll go to mention. There's guys later like Mahomes and Big Ben being selected around that 10th, 11th round, which I would much rather take based on the value, and I think they honestly will have better fantasy seasons than Drew Brees, so I'm not really targeting him. He's 39 years old. He's getting up there. They really want to limit the pass attempts. He had maybe a second lowest pass attempt total, and maybe throughout his whole entire career. It was very low. It was down 100. I know that from 2017. That was actually 9th in total pass attempts among any quarterback. So the opportunity isn't great. Not really feeling him with the 7th round draft pick. So I think he's going to bust. That's the full list, though, guys. You got Drew Brees, Jimmy Garoppolo for the quarterbacks, Jack Doyle, Evan Engram for the tight ends. You got Jerick McKinnon, LaShawn McCoy for your running backs, and the wide receivers, Demaryius Thomas and Devin. Those are the bust players that I'm avoiding in my drafts. Don't think they'll return value where they're being selected. The opportunity is not great. Stats won't be there, I don't think, to really give them that fantasy production, which people are giving the credit for. I'm not giving it to them, though. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to drop a like before we head out. It really helps me out to get these videos out there, and so I can keep them coming to you every single week for the fantasy football content. We got drafts coming around right around the corner, so you guys got to get ready with me. Hit that subscribe button to get these videos continuously heading into the season. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Good luck this season if you don't check out any of my other videos, but keep tuned or stay tuned. And yeah, thank you for checking in, and we'll see you back here again next time, guys.